Welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. It is the most special happy hour we've ever had. I told you we were going to have a bear-themed cocktail for Fat Bear Week, but we have an actual bear in the studio.
I'm trying to not be fat. I mean, I'm trying
You're
to
not
cut
fat.
back
You're very
on
trim bear.
Okay.
This is Bret Baier. So we have America's most trusted news person and Bret Baier, both in the studio.
No, that's good. Fantastic.
So this is a cocktail, a mocktail, of course, called a Honey-Baier.
Okay.
But it's spelled Baier because if you were making a real Honey-Baier, you'd make it with bourbon. But if I were making this with alcohol, I would make it with scotch. So what I've done is, according to the recipe, I made a citrus sage simple syrup with cane sugar, honey, orange slices, and sage leaves.
Wow.
And so you reduce that for about an hour, and it makes this wonderful simple syrup, which we have here. So I've measured it out. So we'll do a nice perfect pour for each of us.
Wow.
There's that. You know, and I would use
Were you a bartender?
No, I really like mixing drinks. I like mixing drinks the way I like baking. I just like ratios and creative flavors. And so
Following directions.
Sometimes, but I've found that when you freestyle and you have an idea of what you want, it's okay. Okay, so this is the apple cider since it's apple cider season.
Okay.
And that goes on top of the what would be simple syrup and bourbon.
Wow. So I was a bartender.
Oh, you were. What was your favorite thing to make?
You know, what was my favorite thing to make? I liked Manhattans.
Yeah, for sure.
You have a certain sense of those. I had a lot of people that liked Long Island iced teas, which were a little tough.
Where was this?
This was at Applebee's in Hilton Head, South Carolina.
That's absolutely right.
Back in the day when you had to do the airplane bottles. So if you ordered a Long Island iced tea,
that's like
it was
15 bottles.
A lot of bottles.
So how did you not get carpal tunnel syndrome?
Well, yeah, it was a lot of opening.
Yeah.
This is a lovely little mixology.
Yeah. So here, you know, it's like you got to give it a good stir. We're not shaking. And then before you start, we need fresh sage leaves and orange slices to bring out the sage citrus simple syrup, which of course, because it's a Honey-Baier, Baier, it's made, the simple syrup is made also with honey.
Wow.
So to your new book, To Rescue the Constitution.
Cheers.
And to Bret Baier making it
Thank
to happy
you.
hour. Oh, that's good.
Wow. That's actually really good. You could taste how it would taste.
Yeah, exactly.
With the scotch.
If there were actual scotch in it, you would see how that would work into
fantastic,
the recipe.
actually.
Thank you.
I may have to get the recipe for that.
Yeah, the overlords here where we work, they don't want us consuming.
Actually drinking.
Yeah, which we would never do. That's why it's a
I do have
mocktail.
a show.
You do.
In other news.
Israel schmizrael. That's what I've always said.
Wow, that is good.
So big news weeks like this, how do you stay balanced? Because it seems like you're on the air a lot. You're on the air, obviously, more than just your show, which you oftentimes are, but especially during, you know, crises, wars, incursions, debate weeks. So how do you keep the balance in terms of the information that you have to input into your brain?
Yeah.
You know, it's like talking to sources, talking to reporters, balancing your time, and then reducing it all as you would a simple syrup into a broadcast.
Yeah. That's a good question. It is a lot of incoming. I try to take, in all honesty, I try to get in a room, unplug my phone, put it aside, and sit for 5 minutes of silence.
Okay.
And I do that like twice or 3 times a day.
Wow.
Yeah. And honestly, it centers me, and then I can absorb whatever. And I'm reading social media, and I'm talking to sources, and I'm on the air a lot. So it's okay. It's good. But you do have to unplug for a little bit just to get your mind like back in check.
So what do you do when you're not working? Like, are you still fielding calls and emails?
In a time like this, you kind of are. I mean, it's nonstop. And the hours obviously are different. They're 7 hours ahead in Israel. And, you know, I'm talking to people in the Middle East. I just got back from Saudi Arabia. And, how they're playing all of this and what they're doing next. They were really close to this normalization deal with Israel.
Yes.
And this is probably part of this attack, is that how close they were, Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah really didn't like that.
Yeah, they wanted to tank
Screw
it.
it up.
So, you talk about normalization. One of the things that struck me was Qatar's response to this.
Totally.
Qatar, sorry. John Bolton used to say Qatar, and so I was like, oh, that's how you say it because he knows everything. But everyone's like, no, it's Qatar. So they get the World Cup. They had the Formula One race last week. They're trying to be mainstream, but then they come out in support of Hamas.
They said Israel alone is responsible for the attack.
Yes.
That's crazy. It's a statement that is way out there for a country that we've, established relationships with. We have U.S. troops as a part of a big base in Doha all throughout the Iraq War. And, they're trying to normalize their relations with us, and yet that's where they come out first. The statement came out right away. So Saudi Arabia's was much more couched, and then it kind of evolved even further, saying they were really concerned about civilian casualties. So I think that you may start seeing the Saudis tone back their Palestinian support.
Okay, which makes sense. But it's almost like Qatar was Rashida Tlaib, who came out like, Israel is an apartheid state. We have to look out for the Palestinians. And then Saudi Arabia is like AOC, who's like, this is unacceptable.
Let's look at it.
Yes, and we have to have a ceasefire. We can't have any more civilian deaths. But it's interesting to see in such a polarized time people jockeying to get on a team, as opposed to having to be rational and look at everything and go, okay, instead of just giving a hot take, which others, an entire section of the population, let's try and get some facts here.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything like this?
Never. I mean, never. Not like this. I mean, there's been violence and there's been horrible things, atrocities, but not at this level, not at this type, and not this coordinated. It was complex. They had to be planning it for months and months and months.
Yeah.
It's not like an automatic thing. This is money flowing in. This is planning. This is getting green light and then doing it.
Yeah, and it's also, and that's what struck me is like the level of coordination, and it wasn't just the timing, but it seems as though Hamas and Iran conceivably had super intelligence.
Yeah.
Whereas Israel and the U.S. were caught flat-footed.
So Israel is interesting. They usually have fantastic intelligence, but I think that the controversy around Netanyahu, what was happening, splitting the party, about the Supreme Court, the talk of normalization with Saudi Arabia had everybody's head other places. And when they saw things start to happen, they saw it as just another, practice for something long, long time away. And yet it was just around the corner, like next week.
Who do you think is going to be president after the election next year?
You're talking about U.S. president?
Yes.
Well, we have a long way to go, Ken.
Is that Donald Trump calling?
This was, don't answer that question. Someone just said, whatever you do, say, I honestly am most up in the air about this. Yeah. I think we could have totally different candidates than we have now. I also think that it's possible that it's Trump and Biden and it's a battle to the end.
Is that exciting for you? Like for me, as a news consumer and, more of an analyst and kind of stir, like that's fun for me.
Yeah.
I love it because you really don't know what's going to happen. And it's like, I'm a libertarian. My person is never going to be president. I've come to accept that. So no matter what happens, it's not my guy or gal in there. So it's like, then at least let it be absolute insanity. And it looks like it could be that way.
It could.
And it's like I see Nikki Haley talking about Israel. I'm like, wow, she really sounds like she knows what she's talking about. You see some of those polls where she's beating DeSantis in New Hampshire. Yeah. And, she has surged after the debates. And you go, if Trump drops out or gets arrested or incarcerated, is she the next one in line?
It's possible. She's made a move, clearly. I mean, she's raised a lot of money. She's moving up in the polls. Every time Trump has been indicted, every time something's happened, his polls have gone up. So, if he goes to prison for one of these things, what happens?
Will they move the Resolute desk into his cell?
Maybe. It's that strange, that bizarre. So do I like it? I don't think it's good for the country,
Yeah.
all of this stuff, but do I think that it's interesting and fascinating and people will tune in because they want to know the future of what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that.
Did you pick the right line of work?
I think I did.
Yeah.
Shoe salesman was not going to cut it.
Were you
Size
also a
10?
shoe salesman
Sorry, yeah.
while you were bartending?
Applebee's bartender? No, but I did deliver food. And I went to house and delivered food after I got off my job as a TV reporter. And I said, hi. And they said, wait, aren't you the reporter on Channel 6? And I'd say, yes. Did you order the calzone? I mean, literally, I was just small market TV.
Everyone needs a side hustle.
That's right.
So, after you're done with this, how do you see, would you have another form of employment? Are you going to go to medical school or something?
No. I think this is it. Writing books and covering news.
Do you love writing books or is it stressful?
I really love it.
Yeah.
I really love it. If this had the scotch, that's my equation. I get a cocktail. I work for 2 hours. I bounce back and forth in like this ping pong match with my researcher and co-author.
Yeah.
And it's like a quilt, and we put it all together and then make this thing that has, I think, is really cool. A narrative of a soda straw issue in history that is readable.
Yeah, and that is your specialty, is finding, whether it's 3 days or just a sliver, instead of trying to explain everything, which can be overwhelming. You really find the sliver, and then you get such a good sense of the players and the context.
Yeah.
And it's nice for the reader because we get to live in that moment.
Right. And so, yeah, it's not Chernow. It's not 800 pages. It's not like a real historical textbook or something. It is a look that you're in the room, ideally, and can feel it. So this one is about George Washington and about the founding. And there's so much that I just didn't know. I mean, I knew a lot about it, but I didn't know this granular detail and some of the characters and how rich that moment was and how we as a country almost didn't form and we almost fell apart. There were a lot of people that said, you know what, forget this. Let's just go back to British rule.
Absolutely. I mean, that's much easier. It's like moving back into your parents' house. Like, hell, I can't come up with a down payment. Mortgage rates are too high.
Yeah.
Mom's always got food in the fridge.
They were ready to punt.
Yeah.
And Articles of Confederation were supposed to hold everything together. It wasn't. And at that moment is the Constitutional Convention. And that's the soda straw moment of George Washington stepping up to the plate again.
If he were short, would he have been able to save the nation?
I don't know. He was tall and statuesque, and we look at him as like godlike, but he was a human, and he had some faults.
Was he a jerk?
I don't think so. I think he was like a really respectful guy. I think he really loved his wife, Martha, and all he wanted to do was get home to Mount Vernon. That was all he wanted. But every time he went home, they pulled him back in.
Like the Godfather.
Yes, exactly.
Every time I try to get up, they pull me back in. Damn you, Alexander.
Wearing a sweater. Yes.
So to rescue the Constitution, everyone should get it. This is a great holiday gift. And I also appreciate you have respect for the reader because a lot of people don't have 2 weeks to spend on one book.
Yeah.
They want something because it gets overwhelming. If you've got a book that's too long,
you don't get through it.
No. And then you end up getting maybe a quarter of the way through it and you feel like a failure. But this, people can conquer. They can go on the journey with you.
Yeah.
And you have done a phenomenal job. So I'm very excited to read this.
Thank you.
And then I will pepper you with annoying questions.
Good. I also do the audiobooks. Oh, I'd like to. I also do the audiobook. So you can, if you're on walking or you're on exercising, just there I am reading for you.
Yeah, you
don't even
you
have
can
to
run
read.
with me. You've got a treadmill desk.
Yeah,
How many miles do you log a week?
I walk, 5 miles a day.
Really?
Yeah.
So do you have like 15,000 steps a day?
I do.
Damn.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think I'd be thinner, but I drink a lot of Honey-Baiers.
No one wants you to be thin.
Okay.
No one wants a manorexic newsman.
You need some substance.
You need a substantial person for these difficult times.
Thank goodness.
Would you ever run for office?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Interesting.
I like what I'm doing now.
But if they drafted you for like a Senate seat, because being a senator, senators, seems like a pretty great job.
Maybe I'll have some scotch with this Honey-Baier.
That's absolutely right. We're gonna top that off, let you do your show, and thank you for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can't wait to read the book. It's out, To Rescue the Constitution Bret Baier.
Thank you.
Happy. And now my week is complete. I told you we would have a bear cocktail. We had a bear mocktail, the Happy Bear. I will post it on X. Along with Bret Baier, this has been Kennedy Saves the World, and I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.